also take you through just to highlight our program for today. And we are holding this public hearing in a hybrid format. We have the majority online, a few of you representing them here physically. So I should that as you came in, you start. Maybe thereafter we shall move to accept introductions. But maybe before that, we have an opening prayer. So we finish the administration, we shall have an opening prayer. Then we'll go through quick self-introductions. We will then have opening remarks by myself and the presiding official, and we'll have the council lead us through the rules of the public hearing. We will then have a brief presentation from ERA, the processes that lead the determination of the annual tariffs. And then thereafter, we shall invite the applicants to present their applications for the public. And those will include Ugcl, UETCL, UEDCL, Escom Uganda Limited. National Affairs, Mr. Julius Wandira of ERA, lead us in an opening prayer. You see the screens. Secretary, can we have the Secretary also introduce themselves?
Ladies and gentlemen, no protocol observed. Good morning. My name is Neshubu Castella. I work with the Electricity Regulatory Authority as a communications officer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And Engineer Zia Tibala Wako, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Electricity Regulatory Authority. I'm privileged today to be joined by my chairperson, and she will introduce herself when she's giving her remarks. But we will come in, Madam Chairperson. We now move on to opening remarks. I'll deliver my opening remarks and then invite the presiding officer to introduce herself as well as deliver her opening remarks. Chairperson of the Electricity Regulatory Authority, members of the authority, colleagues, some of our members are online, joining the participants from the remote, heads of institutions present, heads of the licensed companies, representatives of government, ministries, departments, and agencies, representatives of consumer groups, representatives of the media houses, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to this public hearing for the annual tariff review for the tariff year 2022. I thank you all for the dedicated support to the electricity supply industry and for setting aside time to attend this public hearing. Today gives you a singular opportunity to make your respective inputs to the tariff determination process in line with the provisions of the Electricity Act 1999. We have received, advertised the applications, and believe that the public has given these applications the required due attention. The authority has indeed delivered your support to sustain the electricity supply industry during this
these unprecedented times of COVID-19 pandemic and the associated lockdowns, to this we remain very, very grateful. There have been several milestones registered, including among others, despite the COVID pandemic, we've registered increase in the national generation capacity. There has been improvement if you compare to the previous year in the implementation of the electricity connection policy. We have also started seeing the release of the suppressed demand, with the peak demand currently standing at around 765 megawatts, which has surpassed the pre-COVID peak. The authority further managed to efficiently complete the construction of its new home at Ugcl, Road 5 C1, 5th Street, Nakawa Industrial Area. This has provided adequate space to accommodate staff to enable them work in a safe and a good working environment. We thank you all for the continued support that has enabled us to sustain our #1 position for the last 4 consecutive years as the best energy regulator on the African continent under the regulatory index study. These achievements are yours, we only represent you. Nonetheless, the authority and indeed the electricity supply industry continues to grapple with several challenges, including vandalism, high cost of capital, delays in well acquisition and their impact on project completion and project costs, and the need for more government and private sector funding to enable us to have a robust power system grid network to enhance power supply quality and reliability in a safe and environmentally sustainable manner. The authority shall continue to focus on the key strategic areas that include affordability, driving the sector into optimum efficiency to ensure that this is felt by the consumer through reduction of the price of electricity, accessibility, leveraging your innovations, guidance, support, so that we are able to achieve 100% access to clean energy. We currently stand at 57%. Remember when we met here, we were talking about below 50%. At least now we've passed the 50% mark, but we want to achieve 100% in line with the government policies. And the other area that we are focusing on is quality and reliability of supply and service, the responsiveness of the service providers. Yes, we are aware that our network is not top-notch, but it has a value that it represents. So we want the service provider to deliver that value to the consumer. I would like to thank His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, the Honorable Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, the Minister of State for Energy, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, and her technical team for the continued support. I thank the authority, presented here by none other than the Chair. Our board is referred to as the authority. I thank the authority, you govern this institution very well. And by inference, you govern the sector quite well. I thank my colleagues, members of staff from ERA for the great teamwork and the professionalism that you have exhibited thus far, and encourage you to focus on continuous improvement. Let me also thank the captains of the industry, the licensees, who are the frontliners of the electricity supply industry, for their continually dedicated efforts. Allow me to thank at this stage our colleagues, the media fraternity, and indeed all the stakeholders physically present here and those who are joining us remotely, for their presence at this public hearing and for the continued support that the electricity supply industry enjoys. Working towards achievement of a sustainable electricity supply industry to contribute to improve the welfare of our population, for social economic transformation of our society, for good and our country. I thank you for your kind attention. It is now my privilege and honor. It is unique because usually I'm the one summoned, but now I would like to invite the chairperson to introduce herself as well as deliver her opening remarks. Thank you very much for your attention.
Electricity Authority, members of the authority are online. Okay, I recognize your presence online. The Chief Executive Officer ERA, the heads of licensed entities, the heads of institutions present, representatives of the media houses, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Maybe some of you are seeing me for the first time. My name is Wasagali Sarah Kanabi, the chairperson of Electricity Regulatory Authority. I'm now 1 year plus 2 months old in the office as a chairperson, but 6 years as a member of the authority. Online, I have 4 other members of the board, who include Professor Dumba Sentamu, Ambassador Joan Wabyomere, Engineer Elias Chiyemba, and Engineer Oteng Otogo. That's the team that is leading the authority. I'm an economist by profession, a teacher, because I lectured for 25 years at the Islamic University and later on at Chambogo University, where I retired, but not tired in 2019. I'm a mother, a housewife, a grandmother, a mother-in-law. You can add on. I want to take this special honor and privilege to welcome you to this public hearing, whose aim is to get your views on the 2022 tariff applications. This is a key tenet of transparency and openness required of the authority in determining tariffs. We operate in a transparent manner, in an accountable manner.
Recording in progress.
I wish you had started earlier to record. So that's why we merge, among others, as the best regulator on the continent. Before the end of each tariff year, The authority undertakes an annual tariff review for the succeeding year. So we are here for the next year, 2022. This is in accordance with the tariff methodologies in the respective licenses, the tariff review adjustment methodology, and the electricity regulations of 2007 for application for license and tariff review. Accordingly, between October and November this year, the authority received applications for 2022 tariff review from Escom Uganda Limited. I'm happy you are represented. Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, I've seen the representative. Uganda Electricity Transmission Company, I also recognize your presence. And then the Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, I've seen the MD and his big team. And Umeme Limited, the MD is also here with us. The applications are in accordance with the provisions of the company's licenses for generation, supply, distribution of electricity. Upon the receipt of the applications, the tariff review process commenced with the publication of the notice for applications for tariff review in the new vision of 4th November 2021. The key stakeholders and the general public were invited to view the applications and submit their comments within 15 days of publication of the notice. And during this period, the applications were available for public scrutiny at our ERA website. Consequently, on 30th November 2021, a notice was published in the newspaper and the ERA website inviting key stakeholders and the general public to a public hearing, and it's the reason we are here today. Now, during this public hearing, the licensees are expected to present their 2022 tariff applications. Ladies and gentlemen, in undertaking the 2022 tariff analysis, the authority will consider the views and submissions from all stakeholders received during the consultation process and the responses received from the licensees. The final decision is a balanced one in a fair and transparent manner. Therefore, I encourage you to pay careful attention during the proceedings and endeavor to share your views, comments, including objections to the presentations. Once again, I want to thank you for taking part in this hearing, and I wish you fruitful deliberations. However, as I conclude my remarks, I want to add my voice to that of the CEO to congratulate all Ugandans upon having the best electricity regulator on the continent for the 4th time in a row. Kenya came second, we scored 83. Kenya came up second with around 68. So you can see the gap where the second has to catch up with your regulator. So the African Development Bank has, for the 4th time, ranked us as the best regulator on the continent, and that's no mean achievement. It's an achievement for the sector and for all of us gathered here, especially licensees. When we regulate and you comply, we all achieve as a team, and I want to thank you for that. I want to extend my sincere appreciation to His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, the Honorable Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, the electricity subsector stakeholders, and the general public for the support you render to the authority in execution of our mandate. On behalf of the authority, I want to pledge our continued commitment towards attaining a sustainable electricity supply for the socio-economic transformation of our country. I say all this for God and my country. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Stephen Mwanda, once again. And at this function, I am required to guide you on how we are going to engage with each other. The previous speakers have already told us why we are here. They've given the background to that. Now, my duty is to guide you on the rules that will govern us as we go through this public hearing. First and foremost, we shall observe all the COVID-19 SOPs, meaning that we should keep our masks on at all times and observe all the others. Secondly, these are the key ones. We need to control our electronic devices, mobile phones, and others, so that they don't cause an interruption to the broadcast and also to the speakers. We should be able to listen to each other. As they said earlier, this is a hybrid public hearing, meaning that there is a following on the online platform. Those who are following online or attending online, you will also observe the guidance and the norms of attending online meetings. If you wish to contribute at some point, you'll use the chat function, and your message or your contribution or representation will be received and attended to. You should not feel that you're being ignored. We shall follow the program which has been presented before you, and we shall manage time efficiently. To go to the specifics, the licensees, as mentioned, will make their presentations in the allocated time. We shall use that time efficiently so that we don't overshoot the time that we have allocated this program. The language for this public hearing will be English, and in exceptional circumstances, where it necessitates, we'll provide for interpretation into another language. Those who will wish to speak or make a contribution will draw the attention of the presiding officer, and she will decide, she will pick on whoever, she will decide who will speak at a particular moment in time. So let's be orderly and follow the guidance from the presiding officer. Finally, if you're given an opportunity to speak, be brief and precise and stick to the subject under discussion. We would not want a speaker to introduce other matters that are not related to why we are here. Finally, the decisions of the authority will not be taken here today, but your contributions, your comments, and your representations will be taken into account by the authority when they are arriving at the respective decisions in respect of the annual tariff. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I wish you fruitful deliberations.
Wonderful. How good? Who was a clear? Give this gentleman a set for him.
I could add that our friends who are managing the IT systems, do your best to avoid to mitigate interruption from those participating online, so that we're able to manage this function smoothly. Thank you very much. You could actually mute all participants so that they're not able to interrupt. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary to the Authority. Can I now take this opportunity to invite the presentations from the various applicants. We are beginning with the Ugcl. I hope you are ready. So please step Ugcl generation. Please step forward and make your presentation. Sorry, I'm being reminded that there is a presentation before you come as licensees. Mr. Vianney Mutiva, I think you are the next. In the first two remarks, I think we've already summarized the presentation, the review process. So, Ugcl, step forward and make your presentation.
Good morning once again. As the IT people project the presentation, once again I'm George Tusingwire Mtetweka, representing Ugcl CEO. We have a presentation in two parts, so I'll do the beginning part. Then I'll invite my colleague on who understands the numbers, the budget numbers very well, to take us through that. Computer. Yes, I have the same. Okay. Okay, I'll proceed as they run the slides for the benefit of the audience and those who are online. I will speak briefly about the profile of UGCL for the interest of those who do not know what UGCL is. We are incorporated as a company in 2001, and we are 100% owned by the government of Uganda. We have a board, and we have 183 staff as of now. Our vision is to be one of the leading power producers in the Great Lakes region, and we want the mission to generate reliable, quality, and affordable electricity for socio-economic development. Our key strategic goals: we want to contribute to the electricity generation capacity from what we have currently, over about 380 to 1,300 megawatts. That's largely from government-owned power plants, not for the whole sector of electricity. We are soon to commission Karuma next year, and we are doing operations on Isimba. And of course, we want to ensure that our customer, who is the transmission company, they are very happy with us. And in terms of the works going on right now, we are monitoring the concession of Nalubarekira, which is operated by Escom Uganda Limited. Our plan for the complex is to undertake a rehabilitation of the complex. We are doing a study. We have completed the first one of the study, and we are going to do the second part. We are doing the second part largely to deal with flood management. Please go to slide number 6. That's where I am. Isimba, it was commissioned in 2019, but we are still undergoing the defects liability period. We still have a lot of works in terms of defects that we are attending to and snags that the contractor has to finalize. And Karuma, the planned commissioning is June 2022. We are in the process to see that from around April, we start the commissioning process for the machines at Karuma. So we hope we'll be able to get that. Then, as part of our mandate in the sector, we are taking over Namave, the HFO plant. This was part of the budget that was given to us by the authority, by the regulator. Namave is unique. It's not like any other concession. It's a build, own, operate, and transfer. And this power plant, the agreement expired in September last year, September this year, and we have begun on the process of taking over. Indeed, we are at the very end of the taking over process. The operator, who is Jacobson, insisted that they have to be settled. They have some investments that they did that have to be paid off by government, and that's we are going to do that. The government is in the final processes. Maybe in the next 2 or 3 weeks, these monies will be paid. And at that point, we should be able to get into the power plant as Ugcl. We already have a license was awarded to us, and the power purchase agreement already approved. It's also in the final stages of approval to be signed. In terms of other projects, we have Muzizi. This has had problems in terms of we are on slide 8. We took a decision just recently to retender this project, largely because the tariff that was coming through was very high. The unit cost per megawatt for constructing this power plant was very high, and in terms of also the loan, the amount of money required to build the power plant was simply going up and up, so we decided to go back to the drawing board, but we intend to take a very shorter process. Nyagak, we're at 51%, largely civil works, almost at 51%. The manufacturing of equipment is going on, and I would say we're on track with this power plant. It's really required. The rest of the small power plants, the status, we have finished feasibility. It's really now to fast track investment of these small power plants. In terms of the concession, and this is the primary reason we are here before you, we do monitoring of the concession under the concession and assignment agreement with the one we have with Escom. Under that, we are provided to bill for debt service. There's no more debt under this power plant. The debt was taken over by government. Depreciation and return on equity. Usually the authority doesn't allow this. There are reasons for this, but it's provided for in the contract. Then we have administrative costs, and mainly these are admin costs that we normally receive under this concession arrangement. We do monitoring activities on the technical side, finance, legal, procurement. And so we have a team in Ginger of engineers, and we have staff from our head office, and we all join into ensuring that this asset is being looked after well by the concessionaire, Escom, and that is our duty as far as the concession and assignment agreement is concerned. The key activities we undertake, we look at modifications and make sure that the modifications that are being applied for by the concessionaire what we need at the complex, and we approve those modifications. We participate in whatever other plant activities that are going on, such as factory acceptance tests, because it's part of the quality control, and outage planning. That's when they submit to UTCL, we are part and parcel of that technical planning process. It's just part of quality control to ensure that whatever has been planned for investment is part of the outage plan, and we have seamless execution of those works. The rehabilitation, as I've said, it's a plan that at the end of the current concession period, we do some rehabilitation, major rehabilitation. If you notice, these power plants have been in existence for some time, The last major rehabilitation that was done was around in the 90s by government for Nalubale and Kira. Yes, there's a lot of work that is being done by the concessionaire Escom, but we still think that we need to make some major improvements, and we are focusing largely on flood management. We are probably looking at, if possible, to add maybe some additional spillway bay at Kira to increase the capacity of discharge. So all these are the studies that we are finalizing, and we think by around March next year we should be ready with the study and the costs, and we start the application process for executing this rehabilitation. So that's the end of my part on the technical parts. I will invite Susan to take us through the numbers, then that will be the end of our presentation.
Make sure you put that within your 20 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, George. All protocol observed. I'll just continue with where I had stopped. So our budget application is within the financial year 2022-2023 because we budget in line with the cap. So our application for this financial year, as you will see there, it's 9 months. Why the 9 months? Because we assume that the concession with Escom will be expiring in March 2023. So therefore giving us 9 months from June 2022 up to March 2023. Usually the application is 12 months, but now it's going to be 9 months. In comparison to where we are now, July 2021 to June 2022 financial year, the authority approved a budget of 10.5 billion, but when we look at the application we currently have for the next financial year, we have 103 billion. Sorry about that. So we have 103.2 billion, and where are we having the differences from? So the total income is made up of the concession fee of 23.7 billion. Then we have the small sundry income of 20 million. We have the interest income of 22 million. And then we have the return on equity of 79.4 billion. Then in terms of the expenses, so in terms of expenses, the application here has to be in line with the concession fee of 23.7 billion. We have our staff costs. So the staff costs, in comparison to the current financial year, we applied for 3.2 billion. In comparison to the 3.4 that we applied for in the current financial year. Then the administrative expenses, we applied for 4 billion. In comparison to the 6.9 billion that we currently have in the financial year 21-22. Then we've also applied for depreciation of 16.3 billion and a small capital expenditure of 17 billion. So I'll straight away go to the reasons for the variances. As I already mentioned, this is a 9 months budget because we assume that the concession with Escom will be expiring in March 2023, and therefore Ugcl will be taking over the plant at that point in time. Then also, when you look at the administrative expenses, from the 6.9 to the 4 billion, the difference there is majorly in relation to the Karuma license fees, which is normally applied for within the concession fee. This has been pulled out in the financial year 22-23. Because we assume that Karuma is going to be commissioned in June 2022. Therefore, the Karuma license fees will be paid for directly from the revenue that will be generated by the plant at that time, within that financial year going forward. Then thirdly, we also have an application for the audit fees that is going to be done by the Auditor General to be able to do a due diligence for the Kira and Arubale prior to takeover. We've applied for this within the concession fee so that we can have this activity done early enough to allow a smooth takeover of the plant. And the other difference there is that we've again applied for depreciation and return on equity because this is fairly in line with the concession and assignment agreement, despite the fact that we know with the CAA. So that is our application, 103.2 billion. Now when we go to the challenges for Ugcl, of course we all know that we've been in the COVID era, so this has brought some slow movement in terms of the operation and maintenance. The pandemic has affected the O&M activities within the complex, and also in terms of supervision of the maintenance, that was also a challenge because there was not an ease of movement, and also people had to follow the SOPs. Then of course, we had Then the other challenge we had within the plant, we had an issue of the excessive rains in that period, which has also led to an increased discharge of water in the spillways, resulting to extensive damage to the downstream river at the complex. Then also we have the issue of the floating island in the Lake Victoria, which also had an issue leading to a partial shutdown in the complex. Increasing the output of the plant. Then, of course, the other challenge, which is not really in line with the concession, as George already talked about, Namanve, we have an issue with Jacobson, as they haven't yet vacated the plant. So we still await that to be resolved by government, meeting their obligations on that side. In terms of Ugcl was recertified as an ISO 9001 to 2015 compliant within the period 2020 to 2022. That is ISO recertification, and then of course the award of the Namanve generation license. So those are our two key achievements within the financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ugcl. Participants, please be noting down the questions. They will come at the end after. So can we now have Electricity Transmission Company Limited?
The chairperson of the authority and the authority members out there on Zoom. The CEOs here present. I'm going to make a few remarks before I usher in my manager of finance to make the substantive conclusion. I'm giving salutation from the Uganda Transmission Company. The system operator, we are the bulk power supplier. We own and operate the high voltage transmission grid above 33 kV. At the same time, we're the importers and exporters of power in this country. I want to register our appreciation to government of Uganda and the authority and all stakeholders for the sustained support You know, our past, current, and future developments, stages of our development. We are indeed implementing a very big portfolio of projects that is nearly $600 million. And that is the reason we are seeing a lot of activity with so many towers and substations sprouting all over the country. And to that end, we recently commissioned a line from Opio to Moroto. That's an area in the country that has never seen high voltage power. So that is on the grid now with 80 megawatts. And recently we've also energized the Karuma Kawanda line at 400 kV, which is a milestone. In this country, we are operating at 132, 132, 220, and now going into the 400 kV. The substations at Kawanda and Karuma energized in readiness for Ugcl to bring on the Karuma hydropower plant. So the grid is expanding at must, so that we ensure adequacy of supply, stability, and reliability. Government of Uganda buzzwords: industrialization, import substitution, rural electrification, value addition, and UTCL is a key role player in all these. We do have key challenges, and the CEO here mentioned vandalism. And this has become a major cost driver in our operations. It's a big challenge, and we depend on the support of everybody in this country to make sure that we curb this vice. Yes, we are doing sensitization, we are doing community policing, we are doing skill agencies are now into it, and also trying to employ technology, but the vice is still very big. Access to land is another challenge, and is a key cost pusher in the implementation of projects, with contractors requesting for idling costs because some Ugandans refuse to give us access to land. The other good challenge, of course, is the gap between demand and supply. Yes, there's a big gap between demand right now and the supply. It seems to be a surplus, but that is just short term. This country is moving up and demand will go up. So we continue to ask for your support, and we are currently expanding. Next, we are ensuring that we create alternative power supply routes at all corners of this country, and then ensure that we strengthen our regional interconnections to neighbors so as to spur or leverage our strategic positioning with respect to regional power trade. At this juncture, I do want to welcome Mike Media Finance, Mr. Mike Kantura, to make the substantive presentation. I thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Good morning. Salema Maiko Kananda is my name. Thank you very much, the CEO. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. I'm going to run through the presentation that we have. The basics have already been shared by the Deputy CEO. I've got the second slide. Yes, UETCL basically is a limited liability company owned by the government, and specifically Ministry of Finance, and then Ministry of State for Finance. It has an autonomous board appointed by the shareholders and operates under the policy guidance of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. We are licensed by UETC, by this regulatory authority. Those 4 licenses. And that we hold other licenses, but for purposes of today's presentation, those are the ones that bring us here. We are also an implementing agency for grid expansion of projects across the country. and our mission is to buy, transmit, sell quality bulk power. Our strategic focus areas, these are related in our business plan, which is available on our website. It's the 5-year plan that focuses on 5 pillars. And the pillars are in line with the government objectives, specifically the Vision 2040. The next slide shows what our DCO was saying. That's part of the expansion of the grid, which is part of our objective. So that is Opio Substation that was commissioned last year. If you could go into the performance, the next slide. We have had a growth in peak maximum system demand and peak maximum domestic demand, and also a growth in installed demand. You realize that 2020-2021, there has been a reduction in our growth, and basically it is as a result of the lockdowns that have been imposed following the COVID pandemic. But we project that the economy is starting to get back, and we project that this financial year 2021-22, we are going to have growth. In terms of energy units, in that second part of that slide, and we are being much as we posted a 3.89% loss, we have a target set by ERA of 3.16 in the financial year 2021-22, which we shall struggle to achieve. We have investments that are aimed at making sure that we achieve that target. We have done our best to make sure that the efficiency, that is the reliability in the system, is improved. And as you see in the last line under efficiency, we have had an increase. We project to have a further increase in the reliability. So we have about 96.84%. The next slide was one of our license mandate, which is bulk supply, and there we are having units that we are projecting in this financial year, and where we are going to have these units generated from. So we project to dispatch in this current financial year 2,510 gigawatt hours from the large hydro and the other respective dispatch categories. So in total, we project to have 4,890.25 gigawatt hours at the end of this financial year. And that will mean a growth of 4%. In terms of money, because we receive money, we receive a tariff approved by ERA, and we use specifically that to pay off the generators. And that is basically our role as a bulk purchaser. And at the moment, we have 39, that's the next slide. We have 39 independent power producers, and we have 4 large hydros, as mentioned there. Then we have 2 thermal plants, then the solar are 5, 4 cogeneration, then the rest, about 24, actually 24, are mini hydros. So those form the bulk of our budget for purposes of our budgeting, because we have to get the money, we have to pay off the generators who generate onto the grid. The next slide, please. Some of the achievements, my DCO already talked about some of them. In the year 2020-21, you forgive us, we are running 2 financial years, or 2 years. We have the government year, which being owned by the government, we must subscribe to. We also have a tariff year, which under the license and tariff methodology we must subscribe to. So you are going to see us presenting in a crisscrossing manner. It is not intentionally to confuse, but the regime, it is the accounting regime that we find ourselves in. So our achievements are as stipulated under there. We have commissioned the 60/80 MVA transformer at Tororo, basically to boost power supply within that region. Also commissioned transformers at Okwito Substation, as well as Konge Substation. We've also commissioned the 132/33 transformer, KV transformer at Kampala North. The second slide, please. We also installed and commissioned the transformer at Kamasuke, and then commissioned Opuyo Moroto line, also energized Kawanda Karuma line and its substations, and we have done our best to maintain the grid at 98%. Transmission losses have improved, though we haven't reached the ERA target. And we believe that with the investments and if we work around the challenges we have with project implementation, we should be able to have the losses move down. System demand grew by 25% as of June 2021. The energy revenues are also projected to increase by 10.8%, and we have also managed to retain staff at 99.8%, which is really good. The next slide, yes. So in this financial year, we have commissioned, we've commissioned 2 plants, that's Tororo Solar and Nyamagasani. And then the next 4 in grid have crossed the financial year to 2021-22. And those are AP1, which was commissioned in July, Escort, and Resori and Kakaka. Then we also have Chikagati, which is expected to be commissioned this year. Why am I going through this? These form part of the assumptions that we base on to apply for the next financial year. So it is important to know that the previous performance will have to change as a result of these developments. Chair and members, we have had challenges and we still encounter challenges this year. The first one is deemed energy costs from independent power producers. We've had a challenge with deemed energy. We are having we want to appreciate the government for coming handy to see how we can get out of this challenge, deemed energy challenge. We are doing our best to address, to expedite the transmission lines that provide for evacuation so that we are able to evacuate these IPPs. The second challenge that we are finding in our operations is basically the withholding of funds by our main distributors, majorly Umeme and Ugcl. We are working together with the regulator and the distributors to see how best we could resolve some of these challenges. And as a result, we have inadequate revenue. So number 2 and number 3 are really related to meet the IPP demands. The fourth challenge relates to outstanding amounts from former distributors, individual energy cooperative society, as well as FADSAT. These 2 we are in court, and we believe that we will recover the funds that were withheld. And lastly, to do with the challenges, I think we all we are having a challenge in the sector, and we want to really appreciate the efforts being taken by the government and the sector players. And that challenge is to do with vandalism and transmission losses. The 2 are really related. Vandalism is becoming a very big challenge. it is not only leading to loss of revenue and loss of energy, but also loss of life. It is very important, and we want to appeal to the public that we work together. Please communicate, please make use of the available call centers with UMEME, with UETCL, with ERA, to make sure we curb this vice. And when the line or when the tower is taken down, it does not only affect our revenue performance, it also goes and affects our social life. If someone had been put in the theater and as a result of such an act, the tower is down, then we are not able to save such a life. The doctors may not be able to save such a life. That's a social cost, but may not be quantified in money terms. So it's really very important that we all work together, the public and the sector players, to ensure that this particular vice is eliminated. Chair and members, we have, the next slide shows another achievement that we registered, and that is Mukono South Substation, which we are able to put up. It's really looking nice, not so? Now, we move to the multi-year tariff. Now, ERA, the authority approved a multi-year tariff arrangement for transmission, and it runs for 3 years. And on that multi-year tariff, every year our board sits and allocates budgets, but that budget allocation must not exceed what the ERA approved. So that process we've gone through, and that is for providing up to June 2022, and we'll proceed for the remaining part of the year. The multi-year tariff, however, provides that we must come back to the authority for approval of Capex in capital costs, and we come in light of that particular directive. The assumptions that we've made, it's on the next slide. What I have been going through, the growth in system demand will require increased investment. Will require increased stability of the grid. The grid network maintenance, for us to achieve a 98% availability, we need to improve, we need to invest onto the grid. So we need to, if the grid is increasing, then we need to have the motor vehicles to run around the grid, and more so now that we have a threat of vandalism. It would really be unfortunate if we got someone to tell us that he has seen a truck heading somewhere onto a tower, and the call we can say we do not have fuel or we do not have a vehicle to reach that. It's really important that we provide the necessary capital requirements so that we are able to move to each and every area of the network. Then the following slides, I will be showing you our network coverage at the moment. So the exchange rates are also a factor into this. The CPI, the need for compliance with safety, health, and environment requirements, as well as the need for providing counter funding. The next slide basically is for information, and I had already talked about it, to do with capacity subsidy from the government. This is being provided for by the government, specifically with respect to Electromax, Jacobson, and API. At the moment, those are the provisions. We, however, need to provide for rural electrification levy, which is provided for in the Electricity Act, and also we provide for generation levy, which is transmitted to ERA. So basically, the next slide shows the overall revenue requirement for single buying. Now, this one I'm talking about monies that we have to pay to the independent power producers. And in the budget for 2021-2022, it is projected at 1.2 trillion. And if we add on the generation levy and the rural electrification levy, it goes to 1.26 trillion. And we less on the exports, which is the revenues that we get as a result of exporting energy to neighboring countries, then we have a total revenue requirement for purposes of bulk supply of 1.2 trillion. The next slide, Chair and members, it's relating to transmission and capital costs for the year 2021-22, and that is the projections so far, and I'm sorry, I'm not good on colors. I will use the light green. So the light green is basically our budget. And so the budget includes, the first line is the capital projection, the capital budget, and then the operating costs and other costs. The next slide goes to, I'm hearing a bell, I don't know whether it's related to time. I can be, thank you. I'm trying to move faster, so the bell is so I needed to see clarity whether the bell is to me or someone else. So under the operating costs, we have, those are the operating costs, staff costs and related costs. On staff, we have a total of 500 staff. And of the 500 staff, we include projects, and projects are about 200 staff. So the 300 staff are for funded under the tariff, for basically doing the operation and maintenance of the transmission grid. Then we have transport costs, the grid repairs and maintenance, administration costs, license fees, bank guarantees. It's a requirement that we put guarantees to the independent power producers. Insurance charges, communication levy, among others. But specifically, our concentration is on spares, capital, non-grid, as well as grid expenditures. The next slide. What has informed our application for those particular costs? I think I had already elaborated on them. The increase in route length. We have already added on the Opio Moroto line. That line needs to be monitored. It needs to be, we need to clear the corridors from anyone accessing. Now we have vandalism, so we need to really be closer to the line than we were before. And so every project that we commission requires an increase in maintenance costs. We have the substations. We have been having 28 substations, but before the end of 2022, we'll have 37 substations. That's an increase of 9. But then those substations come with increase in transformers, so the transformers need to be maintained. Increased administrative costs, transport costs, and the bank guarantees and all that. I talked about them. And the next slide, the need to maintain the transmission system grid. Yes, it's our mandate to do that, and we really require the support of the public and the regulator to have that maintained. Growth in business, the increase in numbers and increase in scope require that we increase the operational costs. The next slide shows, I'm running fast. This shows the lines that are in pipeline that we hope if the challenges that this year had talked about to do with acquisition of well leaves and all those costs are mitigated, these are hoped to be commissioned by the end of next year. Now, you realize that if these are commissioned, then surely the cost has to increase. This is another one, the next slide. This is the Karuma Substation, also to be commissioned. So once it's commissioned, then you have to have staff there to operate the network and all that. The next slide shows our footprint. Now, this footprint, members of the public and members of the authority, this footprint excludes the planned projects or the planned network. The grand plan, as you may be aware, is to extend the grid to almost all corners. Now, we only have the Opio Moroto line, which is reflected because it's completed, but then we have a line that we are working on, the Guru the gap, Lila Guru Nebi Lua line. So that is not reflected here, and others interconnection lines that are not included here. What we have shown is where we exist now. This I had already talked about them, transmission costs. The next slide, and there. Now, this is the capital budget that we presented to the authority, and it's basically intended to address those requirements at the substation, the need to move wooden transmission lines to metallic. Now, with this challenge of vandalism, we have now to contact our planning team to see whether we have to go into monopole as opposed to these the steel towers, because the monopoles are difficult to vandalize. But then the challenge is that the monopoles are very expensive compared to steel. So the question would be now, should we go ahead and convert the wood into steel towers before we sort out the vandalism? It's a challenge, but for purposes of budgeting, we have put in a few lines to be converted into metallic. Then we also have metallic ones that are really weak, that we need to strengthen, and the communication equipment. The reasons for that are in the next slide. Or the substations we provided for Kawanda and Mutundwe, because those substation transformers are overloaded. So we need to improve, to have, upgrade them so that we can guarantee the reliable supply. Should it not be given, then we'll have a challenge and we have to struggle. The other one is, I had talked about it, wooden, and then SCADA. All our systems are monitored on SCADA. We have a system that connects with the rest of the substations across the country and also links with the IPPs. So that SCADA was put up in the 90s and was upgraded in 2006. So we really need to move faster and upgrade it. It's very important. Metallica had talked about it, communication equipment, CCTV cameras. We are thinking we are thinking around the clock to see how best can we save the towers that have not been vandalized. So some of the proposals are for CCTV kind of infrastructure, but we also need to beef up the CCTVs on around these access control points for Bujagali and Namungona, as well as Rugonjo, Mbarara, and for Tupoto substations. We've also provided money for new feasibility studies, for new projects. That is another discussion. The next one is construction. We believe that we need to move away from the renting space because the numbers have grown, so we have provided money for that. Motor vehicles, I can't explain it any further. And equipment, we also need spares. Members of the public, you realize that every time the tower goes down, we have to immediately intervene. And we can only intervene if we have the spares. Now we are requesting that we provided money for the spares so that we can have this power restored. That's the second last slide, which is conclusion and recommendation. There is an increased need for capital investments in the transmission segment. And so we need to be able to take up the generated energy and continue to have supply of reliable power. So UETCL is going to continue working tirelessly to make sure that the grid remains stable amidst the challenges of vandalism. And we want to appreciate the public for bearing with us when such an act of sabotage happens. We really want to appreciate your patience when that happens, but we are going to make sure we work ahead of the vandals. Lastly, it will be a difficult job to achieve the transmission loss targets and maintain reliable supply of wooden transmission lines. And it's our plea and request that the authority considers this. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kananula, on behalf of UETCL. The next is UEDCL, but I request you You are time conscious. You are given only 20 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Protocol observed. Good morning. I'm Paul Mwesigwa, Managing Director, UEDCL. Yeah, can you put in the presentation mode, IT? Okay, thank you very much. So, Chair, my presentation is going to be in two sessions. I'll present one session and the technical personnel and finance will present. And I pledge that both are going to be in the 20 minutes as allocated. In brief, the first slide, UDCL is 100% owned by the government of Uganda, and we have licenses as awarded by the regulatory authority. It was established in 2001, but in 2005, for purpose of public-private capital investment in the sector, the government thought it necessary to concession the operations of the company. So Umeme Limited was signed for a 20-year concession agreement, and therefore our mandate as UDCL changed to asset ownership and monitor the performance of the concession, that is Umeme. But in addition to the lease and assignment agreement, we have a license that permits, please go back, that permits UDCL to operate a power plant. It is situated at Lugogo. We are a government company that operates a power plant, and we add value on the seasonal depots by treating them. It's among the critical product in the market on the line, and we are ISO certified with UNBS certification. We operate a tower which we lease out for the space that we do not occupy. At the same time, we do construction of the projects where the need arises to extend lines as appropriately. But in addition to that, we also have a license to distribute power in the rural areas. These are areas outside the Umeme concession, and we are operating in over 62 political districts with 9 territories. Our total staff is 382 across the country, but for purposes of this hearing, we have presented a budget relating to the lease and assignment agreement. Next. In addition to our mandate, our mandate for the lease and assignment agreement, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Wenel because we own the asset operated by Escort on behalf of the government, following the upgrade of the network 13 up to 2014. For purpose of this application, under section 9.2, the asset ownership license mandates to submit a budget to the authority in order for us to get the financing for debt service, which was converted to equity. But we are supposed to get depreciation for the use of the asset by Umeme. These are national assets they're supposed to be compensated for. Return on equity of those assets, and at the same time, the administrative fees for managing this network that is operated by the concession. Madam Chairperson, Next slide, let me request the acting CFO to come and present the budget session. Thank you.
The authority approved the budget of 14.9 to monitor the meme concessions in line with the LAA and WINRECO. And that approval was premised on operational costs, procurement of an asset management system, and a 3.3% management fee charged on other business units. Since we do not only have LAA, we have other business units. That's the pole plant, the tower, and the retail business in electricity distribution. The current year we are in has only run 3 months, so it will not give a realistic picture of how we are performing in the current year against the budget. Next slide. This presentation will guide on how UDCL has performed for the period July 2020 to June 2021, which we have just ended, and we'll compare it against the already approved budget of 2021-2022. Next slide. So that's a performance review. We are looking at total direct staff costs of 2020 to 2021. Again, it's the budget of 2020-2021. So our performance had a variance of only 0.12. The same applies to, we have the total other staff costs, which had a slight deviation of 40%, mainly due to the lockdown period. Some training expenses were not catered for. So we had such a huge variance. When we go to transport costs, we overspent by about 10%, and we'll attribute that to mainly increase in fuel prices and the COVID transportation of staff. We try to avoid staff using public transport during that period. And also the administrative fees, administrative costs, we had a slight movement of 5%. We'll go to the next slide. Actually, next to slide, because I've explained that slide. Just skip next. Go next. So the current application is for 2022-2023. The application has completed the monitoring costs required for UDCL to completely exercise its role as per LAA. And we have picked 5 items. We need to do some refurbishments. We need to do an additional cost on the asset register. So we have applied for some more money. We have well leaves, depreciation, and registration fees. And the next table will show you the breakdown of the actual budget. We have the employment costs. We have from 6.5 to 8.1. Then we have the administrative costs, which will also jump up to 2 from 1.5. Repairs and maintenance, a little movement. Then we have capital expenses. That's our capital budget, which is moving. We had approved 200 million last in 2020-2022, but we are applying for 514, and I'll show you the breakdown in the subsequent slides. The asset management system, you had approved 7.4 in 2021 to 2022, but now we have applied for an extra 5.1 because what you had approved wasn't sufficient. when we sourced for bids. Then we have also asked for depreciation, still as per LAA, much as we know your current position about depreciation, we have gone ahead and applied for it. Maybe this year you'll have a change of heart. There's registration fees. We had a conversion of debt to equity. We need to register that with URSB such that it is documented. It's a 3.2 billion cost. So we are hoping that the regulator will this time around allow it. In summary, our total requirement for 2022-2023 is 42 billion. And depreciation is a figure that we really pray that it's one of the figures this time that will be allowed. Since 2013, it has been, actually no, it has never been allowed. Yes. By and large, when you that is basically a write-up about the costs of the staff costs, what will lead to its increment. There's an inflationary adjustment of 10%. We have recruitment of graduate trainees. Then we have pension expenses, since some staff have opted to save their gratuity into a pension scheme. Then training costs, since the numbers are going up, also the training costs will certainly go up to keep staff abreast with the changing sector, and subsistence allowance to support teams that go up country. In the admin costs, we have the concession monitoring costs. Currently, our board has only 5, but we anticipate it will increase to the 7 board members. So there will be an additional cost on the directors' allowances. We have planned for a consultancy to review the audit function, audit manual, and counseling staff about the merger process, because we know it will have an impact on staff. Then we have the software support costs, which will also go up, and insurance cover. There's a 24% increase in the budget due to an increase in assets covered. This relates to the Capex expenditure, the 500 million we submitted. We need to upgrade the planning software. We're buying some laptops, some furniture. We need a pickup to replace the one, we have one old pickup that I need to frequent sub-country, so we need to replace it with about 180 million. And then some engineering gadgets that we'll need to procure. We pray that they'll be allowed. I think that will more or less end. I've talked about depreciation, I've talked about the asset management software, I've talked about the registration fees. So by and large, that is what relates to our budget for the application of 2022-2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, UDCL, and thank you for keeping time. Can we have the next presenter, Escom Uganda Limited?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to the Chairperson of the authority, the members of the authority that are online, all protocol observed. My name is Toza Makani, the Managing Director of Escom Uganda. I would like to take you through the tariff application for Escom Uganda for the financial year 2022. Firstly, before, I would like to congratulate the authority for being ranked. I would like to congratulate the authority for being ranked the best regulator within the continent, and thank you for steering the sector. Madam Chairperson, I bring you greetings from Ginger, where we operate. The next slide, please. Next slide. I will take you through, give you a glimpse of who Escom is through our tariff application and analysis for the forthcoming year, our contribution within the electricity sector, our performance highlights for the past year, investment that we have undertaken thus far, the benefits and the contributions this investment has made in the two assets that have been entrusted on us, and also the benefits of the investments that we have done so far. Next. Escom Uganda, Madam Chairperson, as you might know, is a subsidiary of Escom Holdings Limited, which is a utility that provides 95% of the electricity of South Africa with an installed capacity of about 48,000 megawatts, with a mixed fleet of coal, 86% of the installed capacity, nuclear, that is 5% of the installed capacity, pump storage, which is 1%, wind farm, and open cycled gas turbines. We are governed by 4 agreements, which is the generation license issued by the authority, the concession and assignment agreement with the asset owner, Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, the power purchase agreement with Uganda Electricity Transmission Company Limited, and also the support agreement with the government of Uganda that promises us to provide a conducive environment for us to invest and operate. We have been operating for 18 years in the concession, and in those 18 years, we have managed to maintain our plant availability above 96% on average. We have a complement of 140 employees, 97% being Ugandans and 3% South Africans. Year to date, we are projecting that by year end, we'll have generated 1,526 gigawatt hours of energy to the grid. In terms of our tariff application, the assumptions that we have made is that for the next financial year, our hydrology will be at the same as where we are in 2021 with the current permit allocation of 1,000 cubic meters per second. Our generation output within the current permit of 176.9 megawatts per hour, and our available capacity within the permit of 1,000 cubic meters per second of 173.9 megawatts, and we had a tested capacity of 320, which I must say, Madam Chair, it was a good highlight this year because this is the highest that we could have achieved since the inception of the concession. The water energy conversion factor still meant to be at 20.5 cubic meters per kilowatt hour, and the GMC at 17.5 million US dollars against the current projection of 12.1 US dollars. We also have concession, royalties, and license fees, which are passed through costs at 3.2 million USDs. If we look at the tariff application and we compare it with the previous years, for the performance of 2020 and 2021, We have to date for 2021 at 1.76 cents per kilowatt hour, which is mostly contributed by the investments that we have managed to implement this year, which are amounting about $11.2 million that have been injected into the complex, and also requesting that for the next financial year, with a limited investment of about 320,000 USDs, but with a planned power of 1,526 megawatt hour to be produced in 2022. Next. This just gives a trend in terms of our power in kilowatt hours over the past year. You will see that in 2022, there is a slight increase to about 2.08 cents per kilowatt hour, which is attributed to the investments that we have added into the assets. When we look at EUL's contribution within the electricity sector, you will note that we are producing about 30% of the market share in terms of electricity that is generated within the grid. If we take a hindsight of the investment that we have done in 2021, as I indicated that we have injected about $11.9 million in 2021, a bulk of it is mostly in electrical projects, electrical upgrades, which is taking about $6.4 million, and with the civil projects taking about 5.2. And you might note, Madam Chair, is that Nalubale is suffering from alkali-silica reactions, and most of the civil projects that have been implemented is to address the alkali-silica reaction challenge that we have in Nalubale. Looking at the two power plants, you will see that over the years, the investment that we are injecting in year to date, 2021, is about $46 million, projecting to be at 53 by the end of the concession in 2022. And you will see in the next slide, Madam Chair, that the bulk of these investments are mostly taken by Nalubale, which because of its age, as Nalubale is about 67 years currently, and most of the equipment becoming obsolete, that needed upgrades and replacements as we ensure sustainability of the plant. Just to show in picture some of the key projects that have happened in 2021, this is the main dam refurbishment project, where we had the main dam with leaks, which was grouted, and you can see the difference after the grouting works have been done in the main dam refurbishment. Then the next one is the replacement of all the 11 kV cables within the Nalubale power plant. We have replaced all the cables from Unit 1 up to Unit 10, and also it's upgraded cables because they've upgraded them from 300 size to about 400 to ensure that there is enough cooling within the cables running underground. This is the key, one of the key highlights for 2021. The next one, the alkali-silica reaction. One of the highlights is the remediation of the staircases of Unit 1, Unit 5, and Unit 9, which you can see how it was before and the after picture after we have addressed what we needed to be addressed in those staircases. We have also done some grouting works on Unit 10, which is currently under refurbishment, to seal some of the leaks within the unit, and you will see how it looks after it has been grouted and some sealing that has been done on the leaks. Then the next one, Madam Chair, as I indicated, the key highlights for this year are our flagship projects, which was the main dam refurbishment, which was completed in August. Our Unit 10 blade servo refurbishment, which is projected to be completed by July 2022. Nalubale downstream columns that is currently running to be completed before the end of December, the upgrade of the 11 cables of Nalubale, and also replacing 2 generator transformers for Unit 3 and Unit 5, which needs to be completed by December this year. All this work we are doing, Madam Chair, is to ensure that there is reliability in the asset. We can produce good quality power to the grid. And you can even see with the number of major incidents, failures that we have experienced over the years. When we took the concession, our average was around 89 major plant failures, and they have since reduced over the years. As we have seen that we are projecting by year end to be about 12 this year. And by major, we're meaning all false outages that are above 10 hours. That is what we qualify as a major plant defect that needs to be attended to. Madam Chair, we have maintained within our power purchase agreement our plant availability on average at 96% compared to our threshold of 94%. Our tariff has been on average this year at 1.76 USD cents per kilowatt hour. Also safety as one of our core values. We have achieved 11 years, 3 months without a lost time injury among staff, 5 years and 5 months among contractors to ensure that everyone goes home safely without being injured. We continue to invest in development of the young professionals that graduate with a complement of 21 graduates. And year to date, we have spent $2.7 million in developing the young professionals. Under our value of Sinobuntu, we have continued to also invest within the community where we operate, focusing on health, education, sport, and environment. Of the graduates that we have developed over the years, as we have indicated that we have spent about $2.7 million. We have about 37 graduates that have received permanent employment within Escom, with others that have been released to the electricity sector to be absorbed by the sector. Currently, we are sitting with 14 graduate trainees, currently recruiting 7 more to get to our complement of 21, given by the resignations that we have experienced during the year, with some of the graduates getting permanent employment within the sector. Madam Chair, with our application, there are three critical areas that we want to concentrate on, is to ensure that we have a long-term plant health that is sustained, and to ensure that our plant availability is above our threshold of 94%, to ensure that we provide reliable power, quality power to the country, and in doing that, to ensure that we also contribute to skilling Ugandans by ensuring that we provide opportunities for the young graduates to get a work experience for them to be marketable. While doing that, to make sure that we are doing it in a safe manner, that our employees, our workers, our contractors, and the community around us is working safely, and also while not polluting the environment. That is my submission, Madam Chair, and we pray that our submission for the tariff for 2022 will be considered and be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Very much, Escom, and thank you for keeping time. Finally, Umeme Limited.
Good morning, all. Madam Chair, and the authority members, CEO ERA, CEO colleagues ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to present to you our 2022 tariff application on behalf of Umeme. So we shall do it in 2 parts. I'll give the brief introductions, then my colleague Blessing will cover the substantive elements. Again, to say that I'm really pleased to be, I think, the last presenter as Umeme, in that our customers and stakeholders most times see Umeme as the sum total of the tariffs which they pay. And being responsible for all those tariffs, whether they move up or down. Just for clarification, we just carry all the costs which have been presented, starting from transmission, our colleagues from UDCL, Escom, and among other sector costs. And again, when we collect those revenues, we pass them upstream. But more importantly for us, we are pleased that our focus remains on serving our customers, which covers ensuring reliability, speed of service, and enabling you a platform to deal with you. Safety remains very, very important for us. We are running more than 39 kilometers of 1,000 kilometers of high voltage and low voltage lines, 14,000 transformers, over 68 substations. We have 1,600 staff permanent, 900 contractors, all serving the 1.6 consumers. We would live and all the time in our operations, at the end of the day, we want everybody to be safe. We don't want our members of the public and our customers to get injured because of the product we deal in. The other third area we focus on is operational efficiency. My colleague Michael from Transmission mentioned losses. For us, losses mean a lot to our business, but also mean a lot to the sector, and mean a lot, more importantly, to the consumers, in that it has an impact on the tariffs. We are glad also that these losses have come down from the 38s. We are now, last year we'll end at 17.5, and we are seeing stagnation in that area as we presented. We're also glad that the average payment culture of bills has greatly improved over the period. Growth is an important element. Judging from the presentation from transmission, where maximum demand has gone up to beyond 750 megawatts, we see that in our sales. We are seeing demand going up by more than 10% during the 2021 financial year. We are projecting the same for the next year, but this has been mainly driven by the easing. As the economy eases up, demand also goes up. We, as a business, continue to invest in technology because with innovations and digitization, simplification of service delivery improves. I'm glad that during the year, our outage management system, GNIS, and SAP, among other modules, were rolled out. This has also eased on, from our customer experience. The same period last year, we had lots of challenges with our customers not being able to get their tokens. But because of the investments we have made in technology, that has greatly eased. We go on to among some of the challenges, again, which will be covered. Vandalism, again, this, I think it has really gone, it's now getting out of control because every day we are seeing, 2 or 3 days ago, 15 kilometers of line on Lira Patch Masindi was vandalized and 15 kilometers of cable taken away. This not only is frustrating our customers, but increasing the cost of serving you, our consumers. It's the cost of doing business in the country. These 15 kilometers of line could be building new lines to serve the underserved. So really, we call upon the sector players, the security systems, and even our consumers and local leaderships to help us deal with vandalism. The other key area, again, I would say we have, as of yesterday, 260,000 customers waiting, have applied via their houses, waiting to be connected. And again, we appeal to the government. Again, more importantly, as they appropriate the budgets for 2022-2023 to ensure that there are adequate provisions to ensure we can. If connected, this would really greatly improve on the demand for power, but also improve their welfare. The other key area for takeaway is generally for the sector to continue working in harmony, recognizing the improvements in distribution as a core element of the energy system of any country. In that, even investors coming in generation, they always look at the energy distribution system. And I would like to join my colleagues again to congratulate the authority. That recognition by the African Development Bank is a sum total of what the country has done in the reform of its energy sector. The other week I was getting an invitation from Liberia. They want to come again to Uganda to benchmark. So as a country, we need to be proud of the achievements we have so far registered in the energy sector, but more importantly, build on them to serve our citizens better. This moment, I invite my colleague, Blessing, to come and present the tariff application. Thank you very much.
Chair of the Electricity Regulatory Authority Board, all protocols observed. Good morning, everybody. So building on from what the MD has said, I think we can move to the next slide in terms of who we are and our mandate. So going straight into that, just wanted to give you a very brief overview. We're a Ugandan company. We're listed on the stock exchange. We have 2,000, if you could just go to the next slide, Vianney, 2,400 employees. 1,600 of them are FTE, while the other ones are, the 800 are contractors who work with us on a daily basis. As I mentioned, we're listed on the Securities Exchange with 35% of the ownership being Ugandans, with NSSF owning 23% of the company, meaning 2 million plus Ugandan households participate in the ownership of umeme. And if you look at UBO statistics, that means that 9 million Ugandans participate in the ownership of umeme. We have 6,000 shareholders in total, and we are financed with big financial muscle, International Finance Corporation, sister company of the World Bank, FMO, Standard Chartered Bank, Stanbic. We serve 1.6 million customers, as the MD did mention. Everybody who is connected to the umeme grid pays for the cost relating to generation, transmission, and distribution, and that payment comes to us. We operate and maintain 4,000 kilometers of MV and LV lines, 14,000 distribution transformers, 68 substations, covering effectively 97% of the distribution business in Uganda. Going to the next slide, in terms of what we do, many people think that we're a commission agent, that we just make 20% off the top. We don't do that. We actually plan for the needs of the electricity distribution network. We mobilize finance. We design the requirements in terms of substations, lines, connecting customers. We do the construction work in terms of the investments, and then we operate the network, and we bill our customers and collect the revenue on behalf of the sector. And it's our job to ensure that we keep the lights on 24/7, 365 days a year. In terms of our role in Uganda, going to the next slide, it's simply to power different sectors of the economy, industry, agriculture, telecom, etc., and to ensure that in terms of economic linkages, we support security, transport, construction, and hospitality. In terms of our role in the electricity industry, going to the next slide, as already presented earlier on by our colleagues in transmission and generation, we're at the tail end, where we connect to 1.6 million customers. And I've already talked about what we do in terms of the cycle within our mandate. Going to the next slide on electricity sector priorities, we know that the key interests of the government and the people of Uganda, access, connect to the network. We are supposed to ensure 80 to 100% connectivity to the grid by 2030, in line with SDG 7. Reliability, as I mentioned earlier on, once connected, keep the lights on. Productive use, when connected and the lights are on, try and grow consumption from 100 kilowatt hours to 500 kilowatt hours per capita. And then finally, of course, affordability. Achieve end user tariffs of 5 cents for all by 2025 as per NDP 3. That's the regulator's mandate, and they are here today overseeing this session where we're talking to you about our costs that go into that. Looking at our performance, which is the next slide, Vianney, and then the next one, we just wanted to show briefly on this slide that electricity demand is highly correlated with GDP growth. So for the country to grow, we need to make sure that, power is on, lights are on. And as you can see over the years, there's been a very, very close correlation between the two. Since this slide deck is available, I'll not go into that in detail and just jump to the next slide on electricity demand. In terms of demand for this year, 2021, we have seen growth, and that has been quite good. Sales have grown at 10%, and year to date, as of end of October, we had sold 2,900 gigawatt hours compared to 2,645 the same period last year. And we anticipate that by the end of the year, we should be at about 3,400 gigawatt hours compared to 3,200 gigawatt hours sold in 2020. This represents, a 9.6% growth year on year, with, of course, the largest growth areas being in the commercial sector at 12.3%, industrial HV 12.1%, and industrial EV 11.4%. That shows that there is significant economic activity that's taking place and that's growing compared to last year. And you will note that there's been a reversal in terms of the negative growth that we experienced under the commercial, industrial LV and HV last year. So that's the good news. Just to note, I know you may not see the figures on the small chart there, but when you look at those in detail, you will find that effectively about 68% of our sales go to industrial customers, with 21% going to households and 11% to the SMEs. It is important as we look through our performance, going to the next slide on safety. Safety is our number one value as a company. We came to deliver electrons to the end user, safe and sound. And it is always painful to our hearts when we find that people die as a result of network interference when trying to steal power or vandalizing a line. As of 2018, the number of incidents had increased significantly to 39. We were able to bring those down to 18, 2019, 7, 2020. But this year, as a result of the opening up of the economy compared to the lockdowns last year, we've seen 11 fatalities so far by the end of Q3 this year. Just want to quickly talk about the issue to do with the generation capacity, because there is a belief that we have excess power. Currently, we have 1,260 plus megawatts of generation, with effective generation as per the last time I had the MD of Ugcl speak, being at approximately 900 megawatts. At that time, peak demand was at about 740, and I'm glad to see transmission projecting 799, which is effectively 800 megawatts for next year. If we are to sell 800 megawatts next year, then that means that we will have a 100 megawatt spare capacity, but it is critical that Karuma comes on board next year to ensure that we don't go into a scenario where, as sales grow significantly, we end up in a load shedding situation. So we also want to bring to the attention of the regulator that it is important that we also close on other big hydropower plants for the period beyond Karuma, if we are to also achieve the 5 cents dream. Going forward into our investments, just wanted to note that some of this growth that you've seen in terms of the 10% over the year, especially on the industrial side, is due to the investments that we completed in 2020. Like, for instance, the Gulu Substation over there, Kakiri Substation, Nakawa Substation, Mtinda Substation, Namamve, where we put in RMUs. It is critical to note that, as I mentioned, we're not a commission agent, we're actually an investor in the network. And that, as a result of these investments, that is where we make our return. The overall impact of this is to show that from the time we took over the concession till September this year, we have seen the network line length grow from 17,000 to 39,000. That's an investment. of 22,000 kilometers of line. Distribution transformers from 5,700 to over 14,000 transformers. Energy losses from 38 to 18%. As you know, by the end of 2019, we had brought it down to 16.4%, but now we're seeing a reversal of losses as a result of COVID and ECP, the lack of funding for the no-pole and one-pole domestics by government has caused a challenge that is leading to customers self-connecting, and we have seen the losses for the first time in our history over the last 2 years growing once again. Energy sales have grown from 1,000 gigawatt hours to 2,600 gigawatt hours. Customers on the grid from 300,000 to 1.6 million. All that connection was money. In terms of access, that is just a summary of where we are as of the end of last year. This year, as noted above there, we have connected over 120,000 customers, which is fantastic because last year we only connected effectively about 60,000. And so we have more than doubled the number of connections. And we want to thank the authority for supporting us significantly, because going to the next slide, we look at the fact that in 2021, we had 3 funding streams that were operating. The ECP funded projects, which were effectively ADB connections and other financials, over 36,000 connections made there. The customer funded connections that became effective 10th of December 2020, thanks to the intervention of the regulator and the ministry, where we have seen effectively now, as I speak, over 50,000 customers who have connected, and we're seeing an average of 5,000 applications per month. And we were also able to get support from the regulator in terms of the capital funded connections, where we were given the opportunity to connect 23,000 customers, and I can gladly say that as of now we've connected 22,000 of the 23. The number here was 10,900 as of September, but as of today we have already connected 22,000. So while that is showing the September figures of 95,000 customers, the updated number is already over 120,000 customers. Going to the next slide, just wanted to show in terms of sales revenue, how revenue has grown from the time we took on the concession in 2005 to 2020, from 160 billion to 1.6 trillion, this year over 1.7 trillion. So that shows that the investments that have been made have yielded a return. Also going to the next slide on collections, looking at how we have performed in relation to the regulatory targets. In the earlier years from 2005 all the way to about 2013, there was a struggle, in trying to ensure that we were able to keep up with the targets. But since then, we have been able to stay relatively in line with the targets, and in some cases above target. And as of this end of last year, we were at 100.3% compared to the target of 99.7%. And this year, we note that we are above 99%, with the final figures to be determined by end of this month. In terms of energy losses, over the period, we have brought those losses down significantly, but as noted, 2019 was 16.4%, which was the lowest we had achieved, with actually an in-month loss rate of 15% for February 2020. But when the lockdown kicked in March 2020, then losses skyrocketed to 20.9%. Then we had to go into the field and go into the combo operations to try and get the illegal connections out. Of course, that led to a public outcry with politicians saying that we need to leave the citizens alone, and that has happened. But unfortunately, as a result, you can see that our losses are at 18%, which is effectively 4% above the target of 14% for this year. In terms of staff efficiency, going to the next slide, you will see that actually over the years from 2005 to 2020, we have continuously reduced the cost to serve, with a staff efficiency ratio of 931 customers per staff in 2020 compared to 216 customers per staff in 2005. And that number has improved also significantly this year. With looking at the cost profile, we had a study done, and it was shown that for every $100 spent by the average African utility, Umeme would spend $77 to deliver the exact same service. And compared to Kenya Power, for every $100 Kenya Power spends, we spend effectively $81. So we are better off in that case as well. Going to the next slide, just to give you a feel for what we do in relation to the society and our ESG governance requirements. We have been supporting the health sector. We have also been supporting the environment with tree planting. We have also been engaging with SOS Children's Villages to make sure that we help their children have a better future by contributing laptops to them to ensure that through the COVID period, they're able to continue learning. In terms of our challenges, they are not different from what our friends in transmission said. Vandalism, very big issue. We have engaged with the sector players, Ugcl, as well as the Uganda Police and the UPDF, working closely under the leadership of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. We've created a task force, which we're now going to use to effectively try and curb this vice of vandalism, because it's been costing us a lot of money. And for every kilometer of line that's stolen, we have to replace it. And we see our friends REA, now REP, also facing the same challenges. Power theft is also a big issue, as already mentioned by the MD, and I'm not going to go into that further. In terms of 2021 and some of the sample projects that we've been doing, Nakasamba Substation to improve supply reliability in the Entebbe area and also give a good feed to the airport. Mukono Katosi to ensure that the water supply plant there will also work effectively. Tangshan Mbali Industrial Park line works. UETCL Entebbe Integration Phase 2, Kampala South Kisubi. For those of you who are living along that line, you know that we are currently going through a series of outages to ensure that those works are completed before Christmas so that you can have a beautiful Christmas. We've connected effectively over 23,000 customers, or aim to by the end of this month. As I mentioned, we've already done over 22. In relation to the Capex connections, we've injected over 100 transformers to date, and we've been working on the third-party boundary protection and also the RTU 400 upgrades for 8 substations to ensure reliability. Just wanted to talk very briefly about tariffs, because we get a very big hammering in public saying Umeme is charging everybody exorbitant prices. First of all, it's fantastic to be here, and I'm honored that the board chair is here, Vera, because Umeme does not set the price of power. The price of power is set by the Electricity Regulatory Authority. And just to give you a comparison within the region, especially for the heavy industry, because we find that our friends at UMA, PSFU and others, come to us to say your price is too high. But actually, if you look at the heavy industry price, on average, the approved tariff is 8 cents, whereas for Kenya, it's 12 cents. It's only Tanzania where you're seeing 7 cents, and that's because it's subsidized by government through the consolidated fund, whereas here we're operating a cost-reflective tariff. So it is important that as we go to the 5 cents dream for the country, that it is noted that even as we speak, the tariffs are competitive for industrialists across the region. Just going to the next slide, wanted to bring it home that Umeme is not the problem when it comes to industrial tariffs. We don't drive industrial tariffs. And we wanted to just give a brief highlight of the fact that we actually buy from UETCL power at 8.9 cents. And we sell it to the extra large industrial at 8.5. So we sell it lower than we buy it. So for the industrials to say, get rid of Umeme, and then that means that the price will come down, that's never going to happen. For the industrial HV, we buy it at 8.9 and sell it at 10. So there, when you look at the net, we get a 3% return there. So 3% out of 100, I don't think that's going to kill anybody. But I think the important thing to note is that the Electricity Regulatory Authority is working on the pricing for industrials for next year. So this is just to make sure that our friends, the industrialists, Umeme is not the problem. Going to the next slide, in terms of conclusions on tariffs, just to make sure, we wanted the public to know, since this is a public session, that tariffs are guided by government policy and they are set by the government through the Electricity Regulatory Authority. They are not set by Umeme. Umeme is a collector of the tariff. Just like URA collects taxes, URA does not set the taxes. So in a similar way, we need to make that clarification, that tariffs actually combine generation, transmission, and distribution costs. They are not just Umeme costs alone. So these are things we just wanted to make sure that we take note of, and to know that as an investor, we actually attract foreign direct investment, and we have a strong balance sheet that we are able to leverage to raise finance to invest in the distribution network. And as Umeme, we appreciate the contributions made so far across the entire sector, and I take this opportunity to congratulate the Electricity Regulatory Authority on, for the 4th time, being rated as #1 regulator across the continent. And when we shared that information with our directors, they were very impressed, because not only were you #1, but you were #1 by a mile. It was a very big margin between first and second. So we are not sure anybody will catch up to you anytime soon. Going to the next slide on priorities and the 2022 revenue requirement. So the key thing with drivers, as I mentioned, our #1 value is safety. That's the first thing that we always focus on. Provision of adequate PPE for staff, and also training in terms of the public safety campaigns. We have to keep on running that, especially through the rainy seasons, and reinvigorating the school campaigns where we go and set up safety clubs. We've been teaching the kids that they shouldn't be tampering with electricity at home or even on the road, and that has seen a significant drop in child death over the years. So we'll continue with that next year as the schools open up in January. On the environment, compliance, and also conducting environmental impact assessments for all capital projects, as well as what we would call reasonable disposal of all waste, or should I say ethical disposal. In terms of customer, who are therefore our next priority after safety, making sure everybody is alive, ensuring that in terms of convenience, everybody who is on the domestic side is on prepaid. The good news about that is we're effectively at 99% domestic customers on prepaid, with the remaining ones going to be completed by end of this year. We've already set up the online new connections platform, so you can now apply for a connection via your computer, tablet, mobile phone, and even using the Umeme app. You no longer have to come to our office. In terms of responsiveness, rollout of the geospatial network information system that will help us improve fault locations and also allow us to speed up the time to resolve customer complaints about outages. Improving business relationships with the large power users, as we continue to do, and also equipping our service advisors in terms of training, coaching, and mentorship, with reliability being one of our biggest focuses for next year. And in terms of our Capex application to the regulator, our appeal is that already doing right now, as we speak, we are going through an internal recruitment process where we are actually zoning the network to a high degree so that we can have accountability at the lowest possible level to improve speeds in terms of ability for engineers to respond quickly to customers' needs, and also to bring down losses. In terms of the investments, I think the MD already mentioned, that's on the next slide, the interest there. So reliability, growth, evacuation of the generation capacity that's coming on board, loss reduction, and efficient operation of the network. I'm almost done. In terms of achieving our 2022 regulatory targets, that is very key. 13.47% is the target. We're going to be replacing obsolete meters, doing meter audits for 3-phase and industrial customers. We shall, with guidance from the government, aim to resume to some level, maybe in a less assertive manner, the combo operations, and continue with the TID rollover for prepaid meters. The target for uncollected debt is 0.16%, meaning that we are supposed to collect 99.84% of the revenue that we bill. And to achieve that, retrofitting of the remaining domestic customers, I said we're at 99%, remote meter reading for LPUs, large power users, of course keeping on track with the government billing and collections, considering the challenges the government has had with the budgets and stakeholder management. One of the key things we'll also be aiming for is customer numbers. The target is 317,000 customers as per the modified license. And the key thing has been to enhance the speed of connection. Yesterday I met with somebody in one of the stakeholder forums and they said, oh, thank you very much, remember, for the customer funded connections, I applied on Saturday, by Thursday I was connected. And I think that shows that where there is money that is availed, we're able to connect within a very short period of time. In terms of our revenue requirement, we have two main components in terms of the bulk of the money that we apply for. One is the investment costs, which relates to the capital recovery in the network in terms of our investments and the return on investment. And that one is a very simple calculation because the regulator takes all the investments that have been approved and then they will apply the necessary percentages to that. The next one is the net operating costs. I've not broken them down because we did have a public hearing where the regulator set the net operating costs for the company from 2009 to 2025, and we ran through all the cost components of those net operating costs. And so what was approved for 2022 is $64.9 million, and we plan to spend within that figure, and that is already embedded within the license. Regulatory fees and other cost adjustments which relate to reconciliations done by the authority, and as well as other programs like graduate trainees programs and so on. Therefore, the final, second last slide relates to the distribution price component. And that shows very clearly, especially for those industrialists who are online, to be able to see that on code 40, we are only asking for an average of 6.6 shillings, Uganda shillings, not 1,000, but 6.6 Uganda shillings. If you are to calculate that in dollar terms, it's about 0.02 cents or something like that. It's very small and does not affect really the price of power. But this is our price component per tariff category and time of use. Going to the next slide, we will be, in terms of our objectives for the tariff that we have applied for, seek to connect customers quickly to the grid, provide safe and reliable supply, convenience, in terms of self-service through multiple channels, and quick and effective response to complaints, especially where power has gone off. Finally, the support that we need from the regulator is adequate resources to deliver on the customer needs for 2020 and full recovery, of course, to recognize the shareholder investments that have been made in the distribution network to date. Our weighted average distribution price is 170 shillings per kilowatt hour. And on the government side, we're asking the government to support us on funding for ECP to enable over 300,000 customer connections to be made next year in order for us to comply with our license requirements. We also appeal to the public that when it comes to vandalism and power theft, please stay away from the network. The network belongs to you, and the network is for you. And the final slide is just to say thank you very much and have an excellent day.
Let's have 10 minutes short break. Just pick your tea and bites. We shall have a working tea. So just speak within 10 minutes. And then we shall have the question session and the discussion. Thank you.